Rick Ghinelli. Welcome to another session of Lunch with Leaders and Legends. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're located. Sometimes I think we ought to call this breakfast, brunch, or lunch with leaders and legends, because we never know where you're tuning in from, but we're very glad to have you here. And I'm super glad to have our guest with us, Dr. Richard Crain, who has graciously agreed to join us today from home. And so welcome, Dr. Crain.
Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Especially with my good friend, Rick Ghinelli. One of the smart things I did in my career was to hire you.
Oh, well, thanks. Everybody has a lapse of judgment from every once in a while.
Well, then our relationship went down the drain after that. So
that's right. That's right.
For those of you who are listening in, Rick has been a great fall for some of my lame brain humor during the years that we worked together. Spring. I've had a great time.
I've learned how to play the straight man, for many years. Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that you certainly made a huge impact on music education throughout your career, and we call this session Lunch with Leaders and Legends, so because some people are certainly leaders in their field, but not quite legends, probably destined to be a legend. But I think you certainly cover both areas. I've known you personally for 40 years now, and I have the luxury of traveling all over the country, and there is not anywhere that I've been that when I mention the name Richard Crain, everybody knows who you are. They may not know you personally, but they know you, they know who you are and what you've done. And your career has just been astounding. And we want to dig a little deeper into that. But before we do, just, some behind the scenes stuff. And what does a typical start to your day look like now that you're not in a regular everyday job? What does that look like?
Well, I get up at 6 and run a couple of miles and then come back and do some. No, I got in some bad habits, Rick, I'm afraid.
Do you have any routines?
The board of directors kept asking me why I was sending emails out at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm not exactly a morning person, but I get fired up about 10 o'clock at night. But all of us have our own schedules, I guess. I got into some kind of bad habits, but of course, now that I've retired from the presidency of Midwest, I'm still on the board. I'm trying to catch up on some things, and the alumni band, for instance, for spring, I'm really excited about that. You're going to be a part of that. And I'm still involved with some educational things with the Midwest, the special assignments. And maybe I can go into some other things a little bit later.
We're going to dig a little.
Would really like to see happen.
Yeah. So for those of our listeners out there that don't know, tell us just a little bit about your teaching career.
Well, I graduated from college in 1956, before you were born, and my first job was in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas in 1956. I was drafted into the Army, and obviously they were looking for better people than myself. So I was turned down with a 4F. I had a couple of physical problems. I was kicked in the leg by a calf on my dad's ranch, for one thing. It destroyed my knee.
Oh, no.
And so that helped a little bit. But I was without a job in October of 1956. So I got a temporary job at a hospital in San Antonio, where I went to school. And then tragically, a band director, Shady's High School, was killed in an auto accident. And so they needed a band director, and I took some buddies of mine and we went down to the valley and had an interview and got hired. I mean, what else could they do? I was the only warm body in the state probably at the time. So I became the band director of grade 5 through 12. I was the only director in the school, and it was probably about 1,400 student high school. And I did not have good college formal training, so it was pretty tough for a while on me. And then I finally figured out that all this rich legends that were really doing terrific work, probably the best in the state, and probably the best in the nation at the time, right after World War II. And so my real education began after I got out of school and learned what I didn't know. Then I moved, after 4 years, I moved to Central Texas to a junior high position in Temple, Texas. And I inherited a very bad situation in Mercedes to begin with, which didn't help being inexperienced. So I went to Temple and I inherited a really good program where the kids were really had good teaching. And we actually ended up third in honor band in junior high my second year there. So really enjoyed my tenure there. Derwin Howard was the high school director at Temple, and he was very well organized. I learned a lot from him. And I guess a point I want to make is that we all are blessed with in different situations, and I finally learned to observe others and their strengths and weaknesses and learn from that. He was terribly well organized, down to almost a fault. I learned a lot about those skills and qualities. Then a position opened in next door in Belton, Texas, which is north of Austin, about 60 miles. It was a junior high position, and but would lead to the high school position because the director told me he was leaving. So I took that job, and I met my wife in Temple, to be my wife. And so we picked up and moved to next door. And then the next year he left, and I became the high school director and was there 15 years. All our children were born there. And I need to give my wife credit because I went in one day and in 1979, I said, "Sweetheart, have you ever heard of a place called Spring, Texas?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, they need a band director." And she said, "Well, let's go look at it." The issue there was that she was on a track to get her doctorate degree, and she picked up and left all of those opportunities. We moved to Spring in 1979, and I was you probably know the history from here on. I was the 7th band director over the previous 5 years. So they needed some stability. And it took me a while to convince the kids that I wasn't going anywhere. And it was long about that time that I was at a contest. You'll have to help me here. And a UIL contest. And I met you in the lobby and we visited a little bit. And I said, "I'd really like to hire that young man. You're still, I'll be a senior in then." And the rest is history there. And so you came into the district, and I was really pleased to get a quality teacher like yourself.
Well,
And after,
well, how did you transition over to the leadership position? You know, we have a lot of other fine arts directors, or maybe band directors, other music personnel that want to be in a leadership role, in a music leadership role. How did you make that transition? Is that something that you were ready to do, or what was happening during that time?
Well, I had been teaching 23 years when I came to Spring, and I was looking ahead that perhaps I would like to do a supervisory position at some point. And I knew that this position would lead into that because they had established the fact that they were going to create 2 high schools. The South Campus, in this case, would become Westville High School. So I knew that that was in the cards for the future that I would do when we went there. And I didn't know the timeline because it had not been established precisely at that point. So then when it came about, I wasn't ready. I was really enjoying working with these kids. You know, there was an established private lesson program for every kid in this program. There were a lot of students enrolled, and it was really difficult because I really was enjoying working with kids. Always enjoyed. I mean, that's why we do this, because we believe in kids and want to work with them. And so it was really tough, Rick, because then you transition from working with children to working with adults, and it's a different dynamic, you might say.
Right.
But I knew if I did not do that, then I was afraid that they might. I wasn't sure what they would do as far as administrative position. So it was tough, but I think I'd been um, behind the scenes working toward this because I knew that's what I wanted to eventually do.
Right.
And then you have impact over the entire district and every kid from elementary, because I saw elementary music too, as you were. So it was tough leaving the podium, but I still got to do music things and judging and guest conducting and so forth.
What kind of advice would you give someone coming out of the classroom that wanted to step into a music leadership role like that?
Well, just to make sure that you want, or that you're ready to leave the classroom, because chances are you're not going to go back. And that, but always keep, this sounds maybe a little trite or juvenile, but always keep the welfare of the students in mind, no matter where you are, because all the decisions you're making at that level affect the kids and their learning and their experience. You want to make it a positive experience. Then you get into personnel, and that's the secret. Hiring you, for instance, and other quality teachers. That's the secret of the success of any program is personnel, getting the right people. And we were able to do that. We had, I call it speaking the same language. You're familiar with that, across the district. And when we would have in-service meetings with just the staff, band staff in this case, I knew that everybody was speaking the same language, so to speak. And we knew, and we made that consistent across the district.
Right. How would you, I mean, I know I experienced it, but for others that are listening in, how would you describe your leadership style? And again, what kind of advice would you give to those that are, other than obviously keeping the students first, advice to folks that are in those leadership roles? How would you describe your leadership style?
Well, okay, let me backtrack just a second.
Yeah.
I also sought counsel from other uh, fine arts directors, music supervisors, and so on. I sought a lot of counsel with them. How did you handle this situation and so forth? So I think that you need to prepare yourself in that regard too. And your question was my leadership style. Well, you'll have to ask those that served under me, I guess. uh, you never try to fool anybody. You have to be honest with people. And the difficult thing, and I know you had to go through this too, is that when you have to tell somebody or terminate an employee for whatever reason, that was the toughest thing for me. But in order for progress, educational progress to take place, it became necessary for me in my career, at least twice, that was very, very difficult to do that. But there was no choice. I mean, it was a administrative thing, but I was the one that had to go and counsel with them. You know, you have to, leadership style is, for me, was observing others throughout my career. Like, I don't want to be like that person because they're end up being negative. And you have to be yourself. And I think it evolves over a period of time. For me, uh, may have been called laissez-faire at times, but you kind of nudge a little here and there. You have to be a little tougher, and whoever the individual is and whatever the issue is you're dealing with.
Was
Um,
there something in particular that you found like you really had to focus on to be better overall, that maybe wasn't part of your innate personality, that you kind of had to get in that uncomfortable zone a little bit to do your job?
Yes, and that's tough. And I hope that's that was not pleasant, but I just alluded to some of the issues that I had to deal with, and the district changed over the period. You probably had different challenges than I did, just because things change. Uh, I wanted to be myself too. I didn't want to be someone that I wasn't, trying to portray myself as something that I wasn't.
Right.
And not everybody has the same leadership style. They have to fit, I think, their personality has to factor into it, the issues you deal with. But I learned a lot from watching others, and I guess I was very blessed in many regards during my tenure there. I tried to have a real close communication with the superintendent, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing what he wanted me to do in his vision. And that communication, I think, paid off. And I know you had a couple of superintendents, I think, that you had to deal with. And fortunately, the superintendents that I had in my career were wonderful, including the very last one who was responsible for putting my name on that building, Spring High School, Dr. Folk. And he made a statement one time, Rick, that has stayed with me in an administrative meeting. I think you were probably there. He was really trying to inspire us and encourage the administrators to go back to the teachers and deal with failure rates and student problems or whatever. And he said, there are teachers that present information to students. Then there are those who have the passion, the patience, and the drive and the perseverance to transfer knowledge to the hearts and minds of kids. It's always stuck with me.
Wow. Yeah.
That you know that that's what leadership is really. You don't just present information to kids. Change is inevitable. Growth is an option, and that happened many times during my tenure.
Right.
And hire smart people and support them.
Well, and for those that don't know, at Spring High School, in big letters on the side is the Richard C. Crain Fine Arts Building, very well deserved, and you've impacted so many lives in this district. But not only here, you've been involved in so many things. I know you've been involved in many professional organizations throughout the years outside of the district. What drives you to be so involved?
Well, that would be pretentious, I guess, to say anything, but it's over my 67 years in music education, I have seen what instrumental music and band in this case has done for kids. I've seen it transform kids' lives, and I've seen it keep kids in school, on task, engaged, and complementing every other academic discipline that they have in school. An example, I won't name the school or anything, but there was a failure rate in the state mandated test in a school that I'm familiar with. And so instead of allowing those kids to stay in this art form, band in this case, which keeps them motivated in school, learning the valuable social skills that no other area can accomplish and provide, they took them out of band and placed them in a special remedial class. And I can just see those kids just saying, I can't wait to get to that remedial class every day. And it may seem like a trite example, but it's true. If they believe them in something that really interests them, it complements the other thing. They'll get that test right.
Right.
And when the pandemic hit, and I think that the pandemic is lasting effect. It's still affecting. But right after it happened, a parent told me that the first thing out of her mouth was the social interaction skills that her children were missing. And they were just going nuts at home, and they were not with their peers. And I can't think of another discipline that allows them to develop positive social skills and interaction with one another as they work toward common goals. You see
Agreed.
that on the marching field, you see it on the concert stage. And one of my sons, who's a very successful businessman, once told me that, Dad, I come home and I look back over my day and what I've accomplished, and I'm not sure I really contributed to the human values and race. And said, I really envy you, because when you came home, something happened that day that you helped one of us, because I had the privilege of having you in my band.
Wow.
And we're blessed with being in that profession, Rick. I mean, we really are. I can't think of another. You and I both have seen how it transforms kids' lives in a positive manner.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Well,
that's the passion that keeps me going.
you
I'm
know,
88 years old, and I hope I'll have another 88 years.
everybody sure hopes so. So let's switch gears a little bit to your time as president of Midwest. You're no longer managing, first year band directors or middle school band directors. Now you're managing, for lack of a better word, a group of highly respected musical individuals. How do you go about, again, for lack of a better word, managing a group like that to get the outcomes you need for a huge event like Midwest?
You have any other questions you can ask me?
Hey, I
Yeah,
told you I was going to ask you this ahead of time, so you should have been prepared.
I'm sitting around the table there, and I'm looking at all these icons and thinking, and here's old country boy Crain sitting over here. Yeah, and Tim Blossom has, that I adore so much. And how am I going to provide leadership? So that's really an interesting question, because I was scared to death looking around the room. But one thing
I'm
that had
sure they
happened,
had as much respect for you as you had for them.
I don't know about that, but fortunately, in this case, I had been on the board for a number of years, so I had gotten personal relationships during that time with nearly every board member. And Rick, the more lofty position that they have, for instance, it fell on me to communicate with the commanders of all the military bands of Washington, for instance, and I just could I just couldn't see myself doing that. And yet, the more I did it, the higher the level of their office, the more humble and down to earth and human they were. And it like I have first name basis friends now that I never thought I would have in the premier bands because of that. And the Japanese bands from Japan and Europe and other foreign countries. But I think that in this case, I'll get back on track here. I was able to develop personal relationships with Harry Beeson, for instance. Well, should I even speak to him or bow or whatever? And he called me Tex. So I felt like, okay, I'm in now.
You're right.
But it was, I think that helped the transition to have this leadership group. And I worked very hard at presiding at the meetings. I didn't want to waste their time. And we had even our Zoom meetings during COVID. I did all the agendas so I could be sure that we cover this, and we go our separate ways.
Right.
But I think it was as much a tribute to them as it was any skill I had, that they are such gracious, talented, wonderful, genuine people to
Well,
deal
and
with.
doesn't everything really boil down to relationships?
Absolutely. And communication.
Yep.
Yep.
I understand that you're now on the board for Music for All, and looking back at the needs of directors and students from the time you were a music supervisor in the school district through your time as the leader at Midwest, and now with what you're doing with Music for All, how have you seen things evolve? How do the needs of today compare with maybe the needs of the past? What are you seeing are the priorities moving forward?
Well, if I can contribute anything to Music for All, I'm blessed to do that. But I like to stay in touch with people like yourself that represents a large constituency. Uh, there, this is a challenging time in education. Well, let's just put it on the table. It's a very
Right.
challenging time.
Right.
There are going to be more um, Title I schools. If you put them in a general, there are going to be more Title I schools. And how do we address that? And how can we keep this discipline growing in place and helping kids? I was in Joe's office this week, and he made the point of we need to make sure, and for Conselmer as well. And to digress a moment, I appreciate what Conselmer is doing, because that's continuing education. And one of the dropout rate reasons was a lack of preparation, not only pedagogically, but in dealing with the dynamics in the classroom today. And but we need to be advocates to the superintendents and principals. We're great about advocacy within our own profession.
Preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah. And we need to do that. And I never thought about it until he brought the point up. Yeah, we're really not. But Conselma, this is where Conselma can really help, and has already been doing it. And I hope that Midwest and Music for All can start really focusing on the areas that we need to have advocacy. And we just covered motivation of kids in school, and what keeps them in school and on task and engaged is, in this case, instrumental music, band. And when I read some of the articles by the superintendents, that was not mentioned at all. They were talking about other esoteric things and
Right.
things that are not really part of kids' psyche. And so that's one area I think we can really work on. And the fact that to recognize that we're in changing times and more Title I schools, that we need to not leave those kids behind.
Exactly.
And all of us working together on this. But the the teacher dropout, I think, is something that needs to be addressed. However we do that, and you're well aware of this, I know, that it's really alarming when
It sure is.
when you see a director retiring at 8 years service, going into another profession. That's alarming. And it just seems like the more successful they are, the earlier they're retiring.
I was in a school district last week, which to me, I think would be a very, a school district that people would want to work in. And speaking with the fine arts director, we're already in the third, fourth week of school, and still had open positions.
Oh yeah.
In a very desirable district. And
yeah.
that is quite a concern.
Yep. And so we just need to be organized and sit down and maybe have a United Nations meeting and say that we need to work together on this. But it's really alarming. And when you see somebody that's taught 35 years and it's still going, you
Right.
want to pat them on the back and say, we have some people eligible to be in the Hall of Fame and they won't retire, which is really neat, Uh,
Well,
anyway.
listen, we're just about out of time.
Oh,
And
you're just tired of listening to me. That's all.
no, I never get tired of listening. We could probably go for an hour, but so other than a nap, what's the next big thing for Richard Crain? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Oh, you're not going to believe this, but that's what I said a while ago. I thought, golly, I got up early this morning. I think I'm going to take a nap after the Zoom meeting. We've had a lot of fun.
So what's on your plate?
I need to give my wife credit, Rick. I could not have done anything in my career without her sacrifice. And fortunately, I was smart enough not to marry a band director. I'm already married someone with a master's degree in business and English. And I learned more English from her than I did in school, I think, because I wasn't paying attention. But by the way, my high school class, I've told this many times, there were 6 in my senior graduating class, 6. And I was in the top 30% academically. Okay. And so it was kind of a shock when I went to college, and there were hundreds of people in my class. Anyway, but I need to give her credit because she stood beside me, and unfortunately I lost her in 2016. And that's one of you asked me what I was going to be doing. Well, one of the things I'm going to be doing, she was a collector, and I've got to decide because my sons approached me recently and said, Dad, what are we supposed to do with all that stuff y'all collected? I said, okay, I'm trying to get rid of it. So and it's midnight, I'll go in the garage and start packing up stuff just to throw away. But I found some stuff. A 1912 Etude magazine, published in 1912, she collected. So I'm giving stuff like that to Tony Arbor and his wife. They were playing the alumni band. She's working on her doctorate, and she could use some of the materials in that. So
great.
I'm trying to do that.
Repurpose it.
And just to closing here, I'm in the process. In fact, I was going to visit with you privately about it, of establishing some kind of a resource so that we can help young directors hang in there and encourage them. And I don't have the vision of how that would be constructed, but just continuing to help young people because things change so fast in our profession.
Right.
Well, in education, it's changing so fast. And to help them be prepared for that, to be able to say, how do I handle this situation? I hate to live I went into a school a few years ago, and there were, during the lunch period, and there were 12 policemen in the cafeteria. It's the age in which we live. We can't.
Right.
So we have to adapt, and change is inevitable, and we have to learn how to deal with these factors that I didn't. Chewing gum was a major offense when I was growing up.
Right.
And anyway, I've been blessed. And
I heard that you once parked your horse illegally.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. So. Sheriff put me in jail. In fact, the sheriff in Belton, Texas, when I left, said, well, you tell those people down there in the Houston area that I never had to put you in jail, young man. So I remember that. That was the best recommendation I had when I left Belton. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for your time. We love you.
Love you, son.
You have, again, you have done so much for music education, not only in your home territory, but in your state, but nationwide and beyond. And we just can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. Looking forward to seeing you at Midwest, if not sooner. And again, thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Rick. Love you. And thank everybody out there. Hang in there. It's a wonderful profession. And I'm
Uh,
going to go take my nap now.
I want to tell everybody out there that we will do this again with a new guest on November 2nd. Unfortunately, the guest that I had planned, we are not able to secure, so but we have some other great people in mind. We'll get that information out to you very soon. And the other thing I want to let you know about is our Summer Institute, which is happening June 11th through 14th. In person. Again, we're very excited about that. We've already got some great people lined up as presenters. For those of you that are music administrators, we have our entire music administration collaborative track that will be going on. So please join us if you can. We'd love to have you. And until then, if there's anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Dr. Crain, thank you again. Enjoy your nap. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Rick. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.